The Newsday continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. The Bangko Sentral kept interest rates untouched for the second straight meeting. The BSP kept the benchmark rate at a 16-year high of 6.5% as expected by economists. Interest rates on overnight deposit and lending facilities were also untouched at 6 and 7% respectively. The central bank, however, signaled a tighter for longer policy until inflation expectations become more anchored. BSP Governor Eli Remolona says the balance of risks to the inflation outlook remains on the upside. This is due to potential pressures from higher transport charges, increased electricity rates, and higher oil prices. NEDA Chief Arsenio Balisacan is optimistic that the Philippine economy performed well in 2023 amid the challenges it experienced. In a palace briefing, Balisacan highlighted the Philippines as one of the best-performing economies among Southeast Asian economies. Balisacan also remained optimistic that the Philippines can achieve its 6% growth target for 2023. The NEDA chief also acknowledged a lesson learned from slow government spending, assuring that it would be considered for better program management in 2024.
We had hiccups on government spending in the first half of the year, right? That really hit us hard by way of growth and the kind of services we're able to provide our people. We have learned our lessons from there, and we would not want to see that repeated in the coming year.
Meanwhile, ING Bank says Philippine economic growth is expected to moderate in the coming months amid weakening consumption and gross capital formation. The company expects Philippine GDP growth to settle at 5.3% this year and further ease to 4.5% by 2024. For 2024, the government is targeting 6.5 to 8% growth. ING senior economist Nicolas Mapa said that GDP growth may not be robust next year due to a slower pace of private consumption. NEDA Secretary Balisacan also earlier said that the country may not be able to achieve the upper end of the government's 6.5 to 8% growth target next year, citing the impact of El Niño and global headwinds. Now, here to give us his insights, we have with us on the show Paolo Rivera, President and Chief Economist of Oikonomia Advisory and Research Incorporated. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us again here on One News.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Yes, first of all, I want to know your thoughts about BSP pausing hikes this month. Now, did the central bank make the right call?
Well, initially, I was expecting a relaxation in the policy rates of the Philippines, but then I think central bank I would have to agree with the central bank of continuing the pause, maintaining interest rates at 6.5% due to the fact that we are expecting some headwinds by the end of 2023 and in the first quarter of 2024. Number one, given the impacts of El Niño, and number two, the slowing consumption because savings have been depleted over the holidays, and the continuous relatively high inflation we have been experiencing for the past months. Albeit, it has been slowed down faster than expected by most economists.
But are you expecting possible hikes in the near term?
Possible hikes would materialize provided that inflation would surge again, would increase unexpectedly. But as long as inflation is steady, is showing some signs of deceleration, then a pause or maybe a reduction in the rates would be possible.
Now, I'd like to know your assessment, of course, of the 2023 economic growth and your thoughts on NEDA's optimism that 6% or the low end of the target could still be achieved.
Yeah, I would have to be optimistic as well and to agree with NEDA that this lower end growth rate is evident because for the past 12 months, for 2023, we have seen an increase in domestic demand. Recently, the labor force survey has been released and we have seen an increase in employment. There has been better labor conditions. And in a recent report by the Department of Tourism has again showed resilience, an increase. There have been a great tourism turnout and a lot of the physical activities in the economy, in manufacturing, in real estate, has also seen increase for 2023.
Yeah, but I'm sure you've heard Balisacan saying that the upper end, as early as now pa, the upper end of 6.5 to 8% target for 2024 next year may not be within reach, possibly due to El Nino and global headwinds. Now, what do you think of these risks? Do you think these risks should have a big impact? And are there other risks that you are seeing that will possibly make us hit this low end of the forecast?
Well, those risks, no, they're generally there, and they would really manifest, no, through a slower economic growth. But then I would like to highlight the impact, no, the prolonged impact of the high interest rates that we have been reporting, because it actually tempers consumption. No, I would have to agree with earlier reports that consumption would slow down. It's
Okay.
because of its relatively high interest rates that inhibit both private sector, even companies, from borrowing money in order to be placed in consumption, in productive investment activities.
Okay, and also Balisacan said though that El Nino will not make a huge impact. This is because agriculture is just, I think, 10% of our economy. Now, what are your thoughts on that statement?
Well, even if agriculture only has 10% of our GDP, the impact of El Nino might manifest in our inflation rate, because El Nino will affect the agricultural production, which would again limit, no, our food supplies, which would contribute to inflation. And as we have seen in previous months, the main driver of our inflation is food prices.
Okay, and what then would be your inflation forecast for 2024? Now, considering the impact of El Nino, and how about for year-end 2023?
For year-end 2023, given all the data that has been reported recently, I could see an inflation tempering, no, at around, or hovering at around 4.5 to 5%. And when we come to early 2024, no, because of the high interest rates, because of the tempered consumption after the holidays, I'm seeing at around 4%, 4% inflation for the first quarter of 2024.
Okay, and President Marcos has approved another one-year extension of the lower tariff rates on rice, pork, and corn as the country continues to battle inflation. Now, what do you think of this move?
Well, this move is sound provided that we're still experiencing certain shortages, no? Shortages in production, in distribution, and the importation of agricultural products would actually help in maintaining the supply that's being distributed all over the country. However, it has the risk of creating some issues regarding our domestic production,
Okay.
because number one, farmers really prefer to increase our domestic production to increase their income as well. And however, the importation would be a temporary solution in order to temper inflation rate and ensure that we are hitting the targets by the end of the year and in early 2024.
On the investment side, do you agree with ING Bank senior economist Nikki Mapa that gross capital formation will likely decline next year?
Well, gross capital formation, yes, I would have to agree that it would decline. Again, and this is driven by the relatively high interest rates that's prevailing in our country.
Now, regarding what Secretary Balisacan said, what can we do then to ramp up growth in 2024 with all the factors that are considered?
I mean, given all the
Yes,
economic
all.
variables, yeah, that we're talking about here, to ramp up growth, number one, I would really call for more government spending, particularly on productive investments, particularly in
Okay.
infrastructure and social services, because this will augment local consumption, domestic consumption of households. And as we all know, the Philippine economy is driven by private and public consumption.
That's right.
And boosting them, giving them the boost, would actually help our economy grow faster than expected.
All right, thank you very much for your insights and for joining us, John Paolo Rivera, President and Chief Economist of Oikonomia Advisory and Research Incorporated. Good morning.
Thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. And we'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on the One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. Maharlika Investment Corporation Chief Rafael Consing Jr. is looking at participating in public-private partnership projects following the enactment of the PPP code earlier this month. In a TV interview, Consing mentioned that the National Development Fund plans to generate income through a mix of project financing and corporate investments. Consing maintained that it will be private sector-led and that the MIC will not start up such companies per se. President Bongbong Marcos recently signed the PPP code, which aims to enhance collaboration and lay the foundations for better quality infrastructure projects and services for Filipinos. Insurance firm Sing Life Philippines aims to boost insurance take-up in the country. Sing Life co-founder, Executive Director Sherry Ung says the penetration rate for insurance products remains at 2%. They say that although Filipinos understand the importance of having insurance, there are many who still find it costly. To address this, Sing Life plans to continue pursuing partnerships with digital banks and e-commerce platforms. That's in line with its aim to offer more low-cost policies to drive premium growth.
This community requires awareness of what the value of financial protection is. Very importantly is to help them with the misconception that it's not accessible, as Zan said in her presentation, that this process can be convenient and not cumbersome, can be cost-effective and affordable and not costly, can be really something that is hassle-free.
Generative AI will not replace writers, says national artist Ricky Lee, even as pundits have identified writing as one of the first professions to go in the age of artificial intelligence. Now here's an expert of the interview on Thought Leaders with Kathy Yang.
Doon din sa commencement speech, hinimok niyo yung mga kabataang mag-iwan ng marka.
Yeah.
And this is something that you said, magkaroon ka ng boses, ng opinyon, mundo mo ito. But how? In the age of social media, when you have generative artificial intelligence, kung pupuntahan natin doon, at hindi pa tayo nasa disinformation, misinformation era.
May AI na.
Ayun nga. How can we harness that freedom of telling the truth when the lines are blurred now between fact and fiction?
Yes, oo. Actually, dati nang mahirap sabihin yung truth eh. Kasi nung social media pa lang you hardly know yourself na nga with all the noise ng social media Mula cellphone, hanggang iPad, hanggang YouTube, hanggang all the streamings and all this and so on and so forth. And then all the fake news. So it becomes so noisy na hindi mo na nakikilala yung sarili mo. At kung hindi mo kilala ang sarili mo, when you write, fiction man or non-fiction or sa news, ang lalabas na boses mo, hindi na rin totoong boses mo kasi hindi mo kilala ikaw Dapat yung boses mo galing sa kung sino ikaw So yung voice mo ngayon na ginagamit to tell stories, hindi na rin tayo sure kung authentic na boses mo yun. And then ngayon dumating itong deepfakes and etc. and all this tampering and then AI. So I think lalo pang gugulo ang situation, lalo pang lalabo kung ano na nga ba ang hindi lang truth, kundi pati reality. Ano ang reality at ano ang truth. Mahirapan na rin tayo mag-discern. But I think we should be able to discern.
How? Paano po?
I think ang unang-una mong titingnan muna is kung ano yung pagkatao mo. I think it will all start with who and what you are. I think you should hold on to that regardless of all the noise na hindi mo na marinig ang sarili mo, regardless of all these temptations and stimuli. So kung may mga blinders that tell me na hindi magandang ganyan or mali yan, etc., I'll have to be observant, analyze, pag-isipan ko, put this and this together, etc. Totoo ba yan based sa kung ano ako, and then make a decision. You have to be very active. You cannot be very passive. Otherwise, hihigupin ka. So may konting vigilance lang that's needed to keep to whoever and whatever you are. It is very difficult, but I don't think you have any choice. And in the end, pagdating ng AI, hindi naman maiwasan. I think malaking tulong naman ng AI kung assistant siya. I mean, it can really assist me in so many ways.
Catch the full chat on December 19, only here on One News. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diego Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. Stay tuned here on One News for the live media forum being conducted by the Health Department.